What up? I just had a radical, crazy idea um, about changing the narrative a bit when talking about narcissistic or domestic abuse or violence, and having this dichotomy of um, abuser or perpetrator and victim, and instead talked about participants. So you are a participant in domestic abuse, or you're a participant in narcissistic abuse, or you're a participant in domestic violence, which gives you agency in the um, dynamic, which gives you responsibility in the the thing that is being played out, because you have agency, you have choice, you have power by 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 taking all the power and giving it to one of the two that is participating. You are rendering one helpless and one omniscient or omnipotent. So this one has absolute power and control over this one, just by using the narrative of abuser and victim, instead saying that they're participants in a dance between two consenting adults, because there's no one forcing you to be in that play. And it's not victim blaming, because that's reinforcing this dynamic. Like, if you feel, or if you think you are helpless, then we need to look at, in what way are you helpless? Can you go to the police? Can you leave? Can you ask friends for help? What is it that makes you absolute helpless? Absolutely helpless. Because that's a narrative you spin around this uh, dynamic as well. And often it is a narrative that you spin so that you can stay in this dynamic, because you have something to gain by proclaiming yourself to be inferior, the victim. Just as I talked in the other video I just did. And by by the community, or by us shifting the narrative, and like leveling out the power dynamic and saying that it's you're a participant where I don't believe that we're blaming anyone. We're just saying there's equal, we start at an equal um, level when we look at the problem. And I'm not saying that there's not situations where one or the other have more power and agency in terms of um, their position within the law, or like one person might have convinced the kids in this relationship that they are the victim of the other person, even when in reality they are the one manipulating and abusing and controlling and punishing the other. But then what needs to be done is to look at why is the other person allowing themselves to to be in that position, and why have they ended up in that position. And there's always options. There's never only one thing you can do. So yeah, I guess that's the like the point of this video is to try and shift this idea of always go in with the narrative of one must be the abuser and one is always the victim. And usually when we look at things that way, the man is always the abuser mostly, and the woman is always the victim. And that has to do with how we value sex and how we look at gender dynamics and how we see, like, that's because our culture is essentially gynocentric. But that's another video. So why not use a narrative and a language which gives both parties equal power and equal autonomy to change their place in reality, instead of projecting a false, hyper-normalized ideologic narrative that perverts the situation. So that's that.